Have you ever come out of a meeting not learned what you went there to learn, not discussed what you went there to discuss, or even not gotten sold what you went there to sell? You know, having a meeting that doesn't go the way we planned usually happens because we didn't plan the meeting. And so what we want to talk about today is 4 keys to better client conversations. We want to get some value out of these meetings that we have with our clients, whether they're sales meetings, whether they're informational meetings, whether they're a meeting to just go over the status report of where we are. We need to plan those out. And the first thing that we need to plan, the first key that we want to talk about, is take the time to plan some thoughtful questions. I know people that go into meetings and they just want to wing it all the time. But we know that if you take some time to think through the questions that you want to ask, it will help you think through and organize the whole meeting. My son just graduated from college a year or so ago in accounting, and he was doing interviews, and so I wanted to see how he was doing, so I had him interview with a friend of mine who was in the HR department at an accounting firm. And before he went on the appointment, I said, let's sit down and let's just put down 8 or 10 questions, things that you think that you want to know about the accounting career, the accounting industry that you might not have learned in college. And he said, oh, I know what I want to know. I don't need to do that. Well, I said, well, come on, humor your dad here. And so we sat down and we worked out about 8 or 9 questions. He went into the interview, and after it was over, I said, how did it go? And he said, okay. So I wouldn't want to take his word for it, and I really wanted to find out how it went from an employer's standpoint. So I called my friend Katie. I said, how did the interview go? She said, well, he's a very gracious young man, very polite, he's got a great smile, but what I was most impressed about was he wrote down the questions and he was organized. It's so unusual, it impressed her. And it's so unusual, it will impress your clients as well. You know, I've never been thrown out of an office because I've been organized. As a matter of fact, I have people peeking over to see what the questions that I've developed are. So develop some good, thoughtful questions. The second point that we want to make, the second key, is to start with easy questions. Have you ever been dockside when a big boat, a big ocean liner is coming in? And as they're coming in, they'll throw what they call a monkey fist. It's a knot, a complex knot, but it's got a weight in it. Attached to that monkey fist is a lead line, which is attached to a bigger line, which finally is attached to the 6 to 8 inch diameter hawser that will hold the boat to the dock. And the reason they do that is because they can't throw that big 6 to 8 inch line. They've got to throw something smaller, which then they can reel into something bigger to finally pull in that big heavy line. And asking questions is much the same with a client. You want to start with easy questions, start with the light questions, the obvious questions, the questions that they know well, the fact-finding questions, and then lead into the more opinion questions and the more difficult questions later on. So you might start with questions that are easy for them to answer, like how big is your facility, or how many people are on your sales team. So the second point is to start with easy questions. The third key to having better client conversations is to use short questions to gain clarification. So instead of asking big complex questions all the time, listen closely to what the client is saying, and then every once in a while you might say, tell me more. Really? How do you mean that? Short prompting questions to move the conversation forward, to drive depth into the conversation, to get more information out of that client, and to get a better conversation. It also shows that you're listening. So our fourth key is to summarize the meeting and list the action items. And so we want to say, here's what I heard you say in the meeting, and here's what I said I was going to do, and here's what you promised me that you would do. Sometimes we may even want to put that in the form of a memo and send it, email it or mail it to them afterwards, so that we've really stated it emphatically and everyone knows what they're supposed to do. Now, we do that not to promise so that we fulfill our promises, but often so that the client will fulfill their promises back to us. So there's your 4 keys for having better client conversations. If you do that, you won't waste valuable client time.